So DDP officially becomes 2-0 against Strickland, and there needs to be a serious conversation held about DDP's identity as a fighter. So in this second fight, I thought DDP did a very good job using his diverse kicking game to apply constant pressure on Strickland's defense. DDP is actually a very good kicker. He's got good kicking speed and technique and knows how to tactically land those kicks. He's got a super sharp left high kick with great dexterity, and this was the strike that gave Strickland a ton of issues. DDP was constantly leg kicking Strickland, and that allowed him to condition Strickland with left body kicks. When Strickland starts getting comfortable blocking the left body kicks, then DDP would come over the top with the left high kick. You hear the term breaking down your opponent a lot, and this is exactly what it means. You start planting threats in the lower areas of the body and eventually work upstairs. DDP was doing that. He also did it by using feints as well. He threw a lot of knee feints, and Strickland is a very reactive fighter, and because of that, he'll react to the knee feints, and then DDP can work up top. It's no secret that Strickland has one of the best jabs in MMA. It was the one thing that gave DDP a ton of issues in the first few rounds of the first fight, and he took note of it by taking it away in this fight. The first thing he did was by countering with leg kicks as Strickland jabs. This is a very common kickboxing counter. When somebody jabs, their weight is all on their front leg. So ideally when they jab, they can't defend their front leg. So DDP kept targeting that area throughout the entire fight. The second way was by coming over the top with the right hand. DDP has a very unorthodox way of punching over the top, almost like a corkscrew punch coming from above. It's a little weird, but hey, it works for him. Another excellent tactic against a great jabber. One of the vulnerabilities of jabbing is that you can open yourself up to a right hand, so that was great by DDP. But the most obvious thing is DDP's activity, and it's his greatest strength. Whenever you're active, you can control the fight better. Whether you land or not, you keep your opponent honest, and in a way you can draw them into your pace of fighting. DDP does that. He can actually dictate the pace of the fight by constantly throwing something. It forces the opponent to feel rushed to initiate offense to match pace. Another thing is that he's just a scrappy fighter, and against a guy like Strickland, who's very hard to hit to the head, following up with multiple strikes is important. The first two strikes might not land, but DDP always trusts his third or fourth strike to land. Activity just also makes it easier to land. It's common sense. You throw more, you'll likely land more. It's that simple. I also thought the shot selection by DDP was great in the sense that he targeted the body very well. Strickland defends in a way where he prioritizes defending head first and then legs second, but he'll rarely defend the body, especially on punches. And DDP is usually known for being a bit of a headhunter, but he chose to dig into the body a lot in this fight. Another element of breaking down your opponent, and it's just a testament to his strategic approach. Another one is just how often he was able to land straight rights in this fight. So often we find ourselves asking why DDP isn't fighting in a club somewhere down the street with the way he's swinging, but in this fight, he kept everything tight down the pipe. He broke Strickland's nose in round 4, and it wasn't even a hard right hand. He just threw it quick with good technique, and it just goes to show you that loading up and telegraphing isn't always a great idea, and this is such a great improvement for DDP. The only thing I didn't like from DDP in this fight was the high guard. Now the high guard was great when it was being utilized from outside of punching range. That's where you can use other elements of defense, but when you high guard in the pocket, that puts you at a huge disadvantage because not only can you not see a thing, but it also entices your opponent to open up and throw combos. And the only moments where Strickland really opened up was when DDP decided to sit down in the pocket with the high guard. Everything else he did was superb, minus this part. Strickland, on the other hand, was extremely disappointing in this fight. He kind of reminded me of how Izzy looked against him. One of the things that massively failed Strickland in their first fight is the fact that everything started with the jab and ended with the jab. You can land a flush jab and it'll look good visually, but if the other guy is coming back and pressuring and throwing 3 or 4 strikes and landing, and you continue to just land jab after jab at a slow pace for the entire round, it's not gonna look good in the sense that you didn't definitively win the round. It was absolutely necessary for Strickland to work behind his jab, because the whole point of a jab is to set up a significant strike. Yes, some people can throw a jab as a power punch, but again, that's not the purpose of the technique. You throw it to find distance and occupy your opponent to disguise a powerful strike behind it. So essentially, if you think about it, Strickland was throwing too many smoke screens, but also when you look at what DDP was trying to do, he was trying to counter the jab with kicks. This means that when you jab, he's standing on one leg. Imagine if Strickland sat down on a right hand behind the jab. This one and done offense from Strickland is simply not championship worthy if the jab is unsuccessful or not enough. Strickland is known for his defense. He has a unique MMA defensive system in the sense that he likes to break the rules a lot. Like, he reaches out to parry heavy on certain strikes, but again, he's a good fighter and that works for him. It was actually one of the reasons why he got hit with so many left high kicks, because he reaches out on his defensive techniques. However, you guys know what I always say about defense in combat. Defense is great if you can make it count. Make him miss, make him pay. If you fall in love with your defense and constantly defend your opponent's offense, you're fighting a losing battle if you're not able to land offensively. Strickland is not a great counter striker. That's not his identity. He was super defensive in this fight and constantly defended without counterattacking. After this fight, Strickland may never touch the belt again. Like I said earlier, his offense is not good enough outside of the jab. And don't get me wrong, when he can land his jab consistently and just play defense, he can beat a lot of people in the middleweight division. But ultimately speaking, his offense is too rudimentary and his approach is too sparring-like. And I think that's one of the detriments to him sparring so much. A lot of people call Strickland a boring fighter, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. Like, that's a huge misconception in fighting. However, with Strickland, it's a different case because he fights at a slow pace. Boring fighters can be boring for many reasons, but for Strickland, it's the fact that he doesn't really open up. Again, not a bad thing at all if you're accurately landing, but if you're in a scenario where you're losing and you're getting outworked, something has to be adjusted, because you can't continue to just do everything one and done and expect that to be the main strategy to get it done in every single fight. We also gotta start talking about DDP differently as a fighter, man. And I'm not just saying this because he's now winning and beating good fighters. It's much deeper than that. Everyone thinks this guy is just some sluggish, ugly fighter, and to a degree, he is, but that's not entirely who this guy is. If you watch this fight clearly and closely, along with all the pointers that I just made earlier about DDP's tactics, you can see that this guy is a high-level fighter. He has great variety when it comes to his kicking skill set. He tactically understands how to defend properly and return fire. He understands that if he initiates any kind of offense, he's aware that something may come back and he can be one step ahead. He can recognize what's open and what's not. He's actually more cerebral than you think. The problem with him is that the representation of his boxing offense is just really bad sometimes, and that tends to cloud people's perception on his ability as a fighter. And you know what? He does have major holes in that area that he still needs to work on. But we as fight fans, as MMA fans, as UFC fans, whatever it is, we gotta stop acting like this guy's a scrub, because he's not. Also, that nose surgery that he got that helped his breathing, that must have really helped him, because ever since then, he's been a completely revamped and new fighter.